Good evening. It is now 6:04, and welcome to the Community Development Committee meeting. I am the Chair, Louis Washington. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on the city's website. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with a roll call. It's like we have three council people here, and Madam Mayor is here, City Clerk, City Administrator, City Attorney, and we do have Director Davis here. So all's accounted for. We'll move to our first item of regular business, which is to approve the agenda. Agenda approved. Okay. At this time, we will provide time for residents to respond for public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to respond to public comment? Okay, not seeing anyone and knowing that we still don't have it available via online, I'll move to the next order of business. We now move to our next item agenda, which is to approve the minutes dated November 17th, 2025. Okay. With approval of them, we'll approve the minutes if there are no issues or questions there. Okay, so for our next agenda on the item agenda is for a discussion with discussing staffing discussion and work plan discussion. That's a tongue. So with that being said, I'll turn the meeting over to Director Davis to introduce the items. Tongue twisted.
Thank you, Chair Washington, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Oh geez, hold on.
It's one of those days, Director. Take your time.
Monday after a 4-day weekend.
Seriously, I think we're all a little sluggish.
Okay. Let me start my slideshow. Is that going to work? Yes. Okay. I just thought I would give you a quick overview tonight of some of the work that we do in community development. So as part of, I have just a very short slideshow. I thought it would be helpful to run through and just kind of give you a comparison of some of the planning permits that we've worked on in 2024 and 2025. They're a little bit different. We didn't do any temporary use permits, for example, in 2024. But the bottom line is just about the same. We did 45 total permits last year, and so far we're at 41 this year. And then this is just if you're a visual person and you want to just see a graph of what that looks like between years, there you go. I also ran one on building permits, and I'm just showing you 2025 to date. We're way ahead in 2025 of what we were in 2024, but still running pretty steady. A lot of mechanical permits, which are basically processed more over the counter through MVP.
Sure. Sorry, Councilmember Johnson, please.
Can you go back a slide? I just wanted to take another look at. Can you describe just one more time what these are?
This is just a bar graph that's depicting what's shown here.
Okay.
So this is just the number of permits between 24 and 25, but just in bar graph form. So as you can see, like in 25, we had 13 pre-apps. We only had 10 in 2024, and that's just indicating that there.
Okay, thank you.
I know that's really hard to read, and I apologize.
It gets the point across.
Just a quick question, Director, if you can answer this, if you can't. Okay, the SEPA applications, looks like we had about 5 more last year than we did this year. Any reason for that?
Yeah, that's because we had quite a few parks and public works projects that required SEPA review.
Okay.
So the River Walk Trail, Sandy Cove Park, the water reclamation project. I know there's some other ones in there that I'm drawing a blank on.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our CD staffing. This is our current org chart. We have a vacant senior planner position available right now. I had previously, we had filled that with an associate planner position. And I kind of want to just run through really quick and explain the differences between the associate planner and the senior planner. An associate planner does things like they assist with customer service. So people walking in the door, properties for sale, they want to know about the zoning, they want to know what they can do on the property. Um, they're kind of our focal to helping our residents who come in. They also answer a lot of zoning related questions. They encourage people with more complicated issues that come in to have a pre-application meeting, and then they help navigate that pre-application meeting. Um, Associate planners typically review what we refer to as type 1 permits, so signs, ADUs, lot line adjustments, and then building permits review also require uh, planning review so that we can check for setbacks and height and impervious coverage and that type of thing. They also process business licenses, track our business vacancy rates, keep our website updated, update our forms and our handouts as applicable, and can help also assist with the planning commission meetings and materials and help attend our special events. Again, an associate planner's focus is more on like customer service and efficient administration type permit processing. So senior planner, they do more higher level planning work. So issuing the SEPA decisions, processing the code amendments, working through projects that typically have to go to a hearing examiner, like a plat or a site plan or a conditional use permit or variances and that type of thing. And so as you can see by the previous slides, like we just don't have a lot of those kind of permits, which is why when my position as a senior planner vacated and I moved into the director role, I opted to fill that position with an associate planner because it would be hard to justify a senior planner or to keep a senior planner motivated to stay to do that lower level work. So that was the reason for having the associate planner. Currently, I don't think there's enough work to justify a senior planner position. So I think that that focus may change moving forward. For 2026, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I just want to, if you go back one slide, Director. Yeah, I just want to make the point that you and I have spoken about this, I think maybe sometime maybe earlier in Q2, but that was kind of my thought when I saw the SEPA application. Well, is that due that, we recently have this vacancy for the senior planner role? Glad to hear that it's not, that it's just we don't get a lot of SEPA applications. My next question would be, so the previous associate planner, I'm assuming did not have any grant writing responsibility. Is that fair
No.
to say? Okay.
No.
The senior planner role, does it come with that? Is that a part of the job that it typically, if you're going to hire a senior planner, that they do have grant writing experience and can help write grants?
Yes, a senior planner. I mean, an associate planner could also help write grants. So I wouldn't say that's a senior level position per se. Um, it's finding the grants that we would qualify for that I think is the trickier thing. And do we have the match that most grants require to obtain that?
So this is an opportune time to definitely have this conversation. As you know, we have budget amendment discussions at the broader council level. I guess my question to you, Director, would be going forward, do you think that should be a responsibility of a senior planner to maybe incorporate that technical skill, or however you want to say that, into that job title?
I don't have the job title for the senior planner handy at the moment, but I do recall that grant writing and grant applications were part of the senior planner
Okay.
duties. I know I applied for grants when I first got here through the Conservation Futures. So that definitely would be something. And quite honestly, an associate planner could assist with doing that kind of work, and it would be a good learning experience to help them gain a lot of the experience they need to move into a senior planner position.
Well, that's very positive here. Thank you very much, Director.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Johnson?
I think you're going to get into where my concerns arise, which is the huge amount of work that the council has been discussing for the community development department in the next few years, based on our prior discussions about the strategic plan. And I wonder how that could change the picture. So,
Well,
take it away.
Yeah, okay, let's kind of run through some of the things that I see in our very near future. So for next year, I think our priority is going to be updating the zoning map. And there's going to be a lot of code amendments that come with that because all of our code regulations are going to change with new zones. And so we also need to address the affordable housing as part of our comprehensive plan update. So remember, in addition to updating the zoning map, we're going to have to run our comprehensive plan back through the King County Housing Committee as far as, having our growth targets reconciled and doing a new buildable lands report and showing where in our city we can accommodate the various types of housing that are required. So that's first and foremost.
Sorry, Councilmember Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, and
please.
then part of the zoning can also, as applicable, include overlays. So for example, we have the overlay on center that we adjusted recently. There are also parts of the business park that, well, I mean, you can see the color of the business park there. It's all part of the same thing. So there's some parts of the business park that do not have the same use as other parts of the business park. And so it could be appropriate to have an overlay there. Or a different zone for that section. So there are just a lot of layers that can come along with this work with zoning. Yeah.
Yeah, so all of that is what really needs to go into next year's planning around the zoning map. So again, that I think that first and foremost is going to be our highest priority. We also need to, like I said, tackle the affordable housing. We've got the Snoqualmie Valley Health Project that is currently underway, and they're hoping to wrap that up and get an occupancy permit next year. So that takes planning staff to work with them. I've primarily been taking the lead on that, along with our consultant, Andrew Levins, who has been helping to facilitate some of the decisions and more of the paperwork. Oh, sorry, got my finger clicked.
Director,
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. Just
Uh-huh.
going back to the zoning. So again, don't want to get too granular, don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but just so I have a kind of a working understanding as we, talk through the budget amendment. Just kind of at a high level, just looking for some visibility. What does that look like? I mean, obviously there's going to be ordinance, some changes in the ordinances, but what else is involved with that work process?
Well, so that's going to entail quite a few public meetings, a lot of public outreach to talk to people. Their zoning is going to be affected. Everybody up on the ridge
Mm-hmm.
faces having their property rezoned from a mixed use to a residential or more of a commercial or retail component kind of zone, multifamily. And so I think it's going to require a lot of public outreach, which is why I think what's going to really be important for us next year would be to hire a good consulting firm that has worked on comprehensive plan updates that can go out and navigate that, and also work with King County and work with the housing committee to try to make sure that we're meeting all of those expectations, and that our comprehensive plan is going to be able to, adequately be passed and adopted by PSRC without facing, appeals like other cities are currently facing right now. So I think many of our cities are kind of sitting back and watching what's happening, to other local King County cities that were a little further ahead
Mhm.
than we were. But we were also, us Incarnation, we were the only ones that ever reconciled our growth targets. And that was a huge undertaking that the mayor took on in 2024 and 2025, that took a lot of time. And so we're a little behind. We've adopted our comprehensive plan with the understanding through Commerce that and through PSRC, that we needed to have our growth targets reconciled fully, and then have PSRC review and then give us the conditional certification, which the council passed at the last council meeting. And so this is going to be a big lift. It's going to need a consulting crew that's way smarter than I am to help us navigate this in the public meetings that are required. Because we do want good public participation. We don't want to just, change people's zoning kind of under the rug without them really knowing what's happening.
No, absolutely, Director Davis. Yeah, thank you for answering that question. Councilmember Rodden.
And thank you. And I think what part of the purpose of walking through this with you is taking the allocation previously for the senior planner, putting it into an associate planner that would do kind of the rudimentary work behind this. But then there's that second piece, and that's contracting out for certain functions rather than having it in-house. And it gives you a little more flexibility. Is that
Yes.
seems to be kind of the sense and the aim of what you're presenting tonight for us.
Yes.
And then just figuring out what part can be contracted out.
The mill site and the Model Train Museum, for example, are two major projects that have not come in yet. I think when those come in, and there's a lot of development proposals and SEPA decisions, and we need to go to hearing with certain permitting types, that's more appropriate to have. And maybe it's just a limited term senior planner for a couple of years to help us navigate those bigger projects. But it just doesn't seem like we can really justify a senior planner at the moment. So I'm a working director. So a lot of the smaller senior planner work that's coming in, I can certainly tackle that. But having a planner here to help field the emails and the calls that are coming in to our counter to, inquire about properties and what they can do on properties is super helpful. We definitely need a planner of some sort.
Yeah.
But I just don't think we can keep a senior planner, really busy right now with that kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you have a question?
And then getting back to so our climate element, we were more than halfway through on that. It would be nice to try to finish that up next year. So there's a little bit of a lift there, but I don't think a lot. And then
I'm sorry, Director. When is the climate element? When is it due by?
the climate element isn't technically due for our city until 2029.
Okay.
There may be additional grant funding from Commerce. We had a $500,000 grant, and I believe we spent about $350,000 on the consultant that we had started. And so they're kind of banking that money for us, hopefully. But they are prioritizing it to the cities and counties that have to do their comp plan in 2027. So unless enough don't apply and they have extra money sitting there, which they have sent me an email and said, if we had the money, would you be interested in getting the money sooner than 2029? And I said, yes, but I haven't heard from them yet. So
Thank you.
and then we have, in addition to all the code amendments, so if we're creating new zones, that's going to require newly written code to address those zones around the density and all the different zoning requirements. But we also need to look at our wireless code and just make sure that everything is updated, and there are a lot of zoning code updates that we need to do. I've been keeping a list as I've worked here and discovered things as I'm going through the code. So we've got a running list, which a planner could certainly help us with. And then we also really need to, I think, take a closer look at our code enforcement. To date, there hasn't been really great tracking of our code enforcement. So I'd like to be able to utilize an associate planner to help implement better tracking, help get our, I've worked with legal to get, some of our notice of violation and abatement forms up to date, but we need to update we need to do a code amendment that would expand a little upon that, like allow for voluntary compliance agreements and that type of thing to be more in line with how code enforcement typically works in cities. So that's another thing that I think we should kind of add to our priority list next year. But really, I know ultimately it's up to the council to decide. But I think if we had an associate planner to fill that senior planner position and then utilize those extra funds that would otherwise have been spent on a senior planner towards a consultant to help with the bigger lifts, I think that would be really helpful for our department.
I'll come right to you. So excellent, excellent, Director. Quick question. So when we think about economic development, we think about bringing businesses to Snoqualmie and having those broader conversations and the kind of businesses we want here. Is that something that you're currently working on, or is that something that someone else in the economic development department, community development is working on, or how do we start those conversations? And is there anyone? Okay.
Nicole Wiebe is our community liaison, and so she's out at many of our merchant meetings, and she's out dealing or talking with our businesses and hearing from our local businesses. Her and I jointly try to tag team or share, trying to reach out. Like, for example, Bartell's has been vacated. So we've been collaborating and working with the leasing agent or the owner that's trying to lease the property. And then if we hear of things, as we're out in the community, we've been reaching out to them and saying like, hey, have you thought about this business or thought about that business? And so we're kind of jointly doing that.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilmember Johnson. Do you have a question, Councilmember Wadden?
Yes, actually, I believe, is there a reason why Mr. Boutte is in the room? Does he have some numbers to share with us?
He does. With that, I will turn it over to Drew. I will stop sharing.
Quite the segue. Well done. You picked up from the first meeting.
Yes. There is a theme tonight.
There is a theme tonight, indeed.
It's called
All right.
gifting.
I just thought
So
you
I'm
were
going to share my
point.
screen. I still haven't learned from the first meeting, by the way. Going to talk about the positions and the strategies overall. If council does want to change the size of the department with the levels of service desired and so on, we have to keep in mind the cost per each position. So right now, in terms of all positions within the Teamsters CBA, we've got a range of basically $118,000 for a planning technician, all the way up to $162,000 for a senior planner. That includes wages and benefits, so there's no operational expenses tied to that necessarily, but those are the cost ranges for these different positions. What's important to keep in mind is we have to find a way to balance our finances, and council saw at the previous meeting kind of the lines crossing and all that. And we often have to consider kind of the lane that we want to approach it from. And so we're often looking at three different lanes. We're often looking at trying to enhance our revenues, develop economically, or optimize the levels of service at the city overall in order to figure out a way to fund some of council's priorities. With that said, we kind of went through a very preliminary list, generally incomplete, about what those enhancing revenue options might look like. Some of the projects that are somewhat underway, I would say, in terms of helping the city to develop economically, and then some optimizing level of service options. As you'll note at the table down below there are some additional options available to optimizing levels of service that can include things such as staffing reductions in other areas of the city in order to support, say, shifting those resources to the community development department. And then also we've had a conversation just briefly, I mentioned this very briefly at public safety, about speed safety cameras that are really designed to reduce the speeds around, say, school zones, but can also draw or increase revenue at the city overall, which wouldn't really support, say, something like this, but would support maybe more police services and so on. So generally, we're often looking at these three different lanes. If council chooses to increase the size of the department from what we've currently got in the amended budget overall, we'd want council's help to determine what lane you guys want us to look at overall, whether we should focus on trying to increase or enhance our revenues, focus on developing economically, or trying to optimize our levels of service to be able to shift some resources towards the CD department. In addition to that, one of the options that isn't here that probably needs to be mentioned is we do have a comprehensive fee study that will be coming to council next year. The CD department is generally based on a contracting model, which means in essence, if a developer comes in and wants to develop some degree of property, we often hire an outside consultant to come in and actually help support that work with land reviews and so on, land use reviews and other kind of work that we would need. We would then pass through those charges to the developer. We might pay for that invoice first, but then we're passing through those invoices to the developer to repay us for the consultant fees that we were charged overall. That is one model. There are other models. And so one of the models that you're going to see through the comprehensive fee study is to charge for things such as land use applications and things like that that would recover money to be able to have an in-house planner as opposed to an outside consultant kind of doing that work. So that's one consideration that council would potentially see in the comprehensive fee study is what would it look like if we wanted to charge those planning fees ourselves. We currently don't have a schedule. A lot of cities have these kind of fee schedules in place for their planning department, but because we choose to kind of utilize a contract model, this will be something that will be completely new to council in the comprehensive fee study to consider. So that is one option for how to increase our staffing levels in the department, is to bring some of that work in-house by potentially creating some fees that we would charge for land use applications, environmental reviews, shoreline permits, signs, subdivisions, appeals, things like that. And so you'll see that in January, February of next year. With that said, I'll turn it back over to the chair, but that's all of my
Well,
part of the presentation.
if you don't mind, Director, we'll just hold there and see if there are some questions for you. I'm sure there are. Councilmember Watton, do you have questions for the director?
I think this is an important discussion to have, but there's needs to be a little more work on our part.
I tend to agree. Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
See,
Uh,
typing.
First thing was that having people in-house does also allow us to have some continuity of knowledge. And it can avoid potential situations, especially for community development, that I could envision of we've got something in code and it gets applied a certain way to one particular development, but then that person's gone. And we've lost that history. No one remembers exactly how that happened or where or when or why. And then there's another development that tries to do something similar, but then we have a new staff in who doesn't know anything about what was done before, but applies the code in a slightly different way, or gives recommendation to the planning commission to do something a certain way. And while in a perfect world, the code would be crystal clear in every single respect, the reality is that there are things that are not that perfect and could really never be written to be perfect to address every single possible situation. So that can create a potential conflict. Whereas if we had someone who was around for some period of time, they would have that history. And when someone else comes on board, then they could be trained up. It's like, oh yeah, so in this city, historically, we've done it this way. And then they just know, and they could kind of pass along that knowledge. So that's something that I've been concerned about for some time. And then the other thing I just want to mention was about the code enforcement, and that came up a little bit earlier as well with Director Davis, that what I have found in my short time here on the council is that code enforcement being done properly can avoid a lot of headaches down the road. So I look forward to re-engaging with that in the future.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll make a couple of comments here. If you could maybe put up that last slide, please, Director. So I do agree with Councilmember Johnson. I think institutional knowledge does create some economies of scale. So there's a benefit to it. Cards on the table makes me uneasy seeing the speed safety cameras under a funding strategy. I think it could be considered, but I'd like to see it under a public safety discussion.
I'll just say
Yeah.
that this list was presented to both the Public Safety Committee in relation to the mental health professional conversation and this committee as well.
Absolutely understood. Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, Chair, I do agree that I'm concerned about would it actually make up for the cost of installing it and stuff, but I don't know. So hypothetically, maybe it could generate that amount of revenue. To what scale, I don't know. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. The comment that I would make, I just know that in a lot of communities, there's been a huge pushback on them. And again, there's a lot of data out there that says that, you know, by the time you pay for the equipment and then pay for the services, the city's potentially met with a net loss. So definitely some considerations there. But I think just seeing it under a funding strategy, and I totally understand where you're coming from, Director, that it was presented to the public safety. But I think for me to be on board with something like that, I'd really have to understand what are the public safety implications and, you know, how is it making our streets safer? Councilmember Watton.
So just point of reference, the reason why he has this in the list, this is the comprehensive review of all the things that we as a council are considering. I believe that if we were to take the speed safety cameras, that money would be dedicated towards public safety. It wouldn't be going to community development. So just keep that in mind. This is a comprehensive list of all the things that we have, and it may not apply to what we're talking about in this position, other than the fact that we have to fund public safety out of something, and it might be at the expense of other departments if we don't have the revenue coming in, because it's not all directly related to public safety. Or we're taking from the general fund. And the same thing is there are dedicated funds that we can't touch, that we're not going to use for community development. But it's the general administration of the city that we may want to reallocate positions accordingly so that we balance things out better.
Councilmember Johnson?
Yeah, I think the way that I'm thinking about it is just in general, how we're looking at this, regardless of that particular example, is that if we have a certain size of the pie and we're trying to slice it up amongst all of our departments, if there is a particular type of pie that only one particular department can use, but we haven't actually brought that over to our table. I'm just going to go with this analogy here. But we haven't brought it over to our table yet. Then we're stuck with just that one pie. So if we could take some of that one of those departments is using and shift it over here, that leaves the whole rest of that other pie available to the rest of the departments to use. So I hope that made some sense as an analogy.
Made a lot of sense to me.
Okay, good.
Okay. Any other questions for the director? Okay. Thank you
Think
very
we
much,
could.
Director.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Chair.
Yes, please, Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, so then just kind of going back to like policy wise and thinking about our staffing needs and stuff. It sounds to me like there is a need for someone more than just a permit technician and community development director and building official. It sounds like that is not sufficient. So perhaps it's an associate planner, perhaps it's a senior planner. Those are things to be considered, but it sounds to me like just those three positions would not be enough on their own for community development, especially moving forward to our big plans for the next couple of years.
Yeah, that was my takeaway, that we're definitely in need of at least an associate planner. City Administrator Chambliss?
Sure. Traditionally during the holidays, it's a terrible time to recruit for vacancies. So we are planning on beginning that recruitment mid-December.
Okay.
Run through mid-January. in the hopes that we can find a suitable candidate at that time. So this is our intention to get on it. It's just putting it out there right now, and no one's looking.
That makes sense. And just a follow-up question, City Administrator, is the associate planner CBA, is it a collective bargaining agreement position?
All the planners
All the
are
planners,
under the
okay.
Teamsters.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wadden?
And clarification, when you post this, are you posting it as an associate planner or are you going to post it as an assistant planner / associate planner based on one's qualifications? Because you may end up with more people that fit in the mold of the assistant planner than the associate planner. I want to see that there's some flexibility, especially given the nature of the job pool.
So if the director wants to go that route, we would post it twice. We can't post a single post for two different positions.
Mm,
We'd have to do two postings for one job, which we have done, and it's okay to do. But we don't do one posting for two jobs.
Okay.
Director Davis?
I just came up in case
Oh.
there were other.
Just to keep the peace. Okay.
Mike's doing a great job. Job, Mike.
Were there any other questions or comments, concerns? Okay. Director, did you have anything else to add?
No, but I appreciate Councilmember Johnson's comment about having a little succession planning, because I feel like we have kind of lost our institutional knowledge. We have a building official that's been here 28 years now that, you know, is likely going to retire in the next year, maybe. He says he is, we'll see. But I think that would be, you know, an important thing to be considering. I'm no spring chicken. I'm probably not going to be here forever. You know, I would like to be able to help train new planners coming through and, you know, try to get some better codes and procedures and things established over the course of the next few years.
Yeah, I think in general, we have a new administration coming in next year. So I think in general, just at the broader council, that's up for discussion, not just in CD, but other departments. Great point. Okay, so there being no further business to come before this committee, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Okay, it's 6:41 and we are adjourned.